Major Case True Crime Investigations. In each episode, we delve into the details of significant criminal cases from around the world. Through meticulous research and narrative storytelling, we aim to uncover the truth behind these major cases.
In China, there was a case so twisted, so mind-bending, that many on the internet have dubbed it the most bizarre criminal case in Chinese history. Even seasoned detectives, men and women who had seen it all, admitted. You might work a lifetime in homicide and never see a case like this. It was a crime that came dangerously close to perfection. A case that turned logic inside out, flipping guilt and innocence on their heads. The victim was the killer. And the killer? Also a victim. The murderer killed the murderer. The suspect became the dead. And the dead became the suspect. And just when you think it couldn't twist any further, the real mastermind behind it all was the very first person believed to be the victim. If it hadn't been for a single slip of the tongue, this could have been a perfect crime. Our story takes us to Suanji Township, a rural part of Shanghai County in Jinan City, Shandong Province. Let's go back to the summer of 2010. On July 13th, a villager was passing through an abandoned and isolated piece of farmland. A place so remote, few ever had reason to go there. As he walked past an old, disused well, something made him glance down. At first, it looked strange. Something wasn't right. He leaned in, took a closer look, and then froze. At the bottom of the well was a human foot. Panicked, the man called the police. Officers arrived quickly and began examining the scene. Inside the narrow, dirt-filled shaft of the well, they confirmed what he saw. A corpse, jammed headfirst into the ground. The shaft had been sealed with soil, leaving only 1 foot exposed to the surface. The opening of the well was barely larger than a basketball. It took extraordinary effort and delicate work for investigators to extract the body from the tight space. What they uncovered was just the beginning of a case that would baffle even the most experienced detectives. The body was naked. Though the face was severely decomposed, one thing stood out unmistakably. The man had a large, powerful build, 6 feet tall, weighing nearly 200 pounds. In a small rural community like this, that kind of physique wasn't common. He would have stood out. The autopsy revealed the cause of death. A massive, crushing blow to the back of the skull. Blunt force trauma. Instant death. But what really caught investigators' attention was the location. This wasn't just any well. Well number 029 was positioned at the meeting point of 3 separate villages. A place with no houses, no people, no one around for miles. Whoever dumped the body here had planned it carefully. This was no impulsive act. It was calculated. The forensic team estimated the time of death to be anywhere between 3 and 12 months prior. That meant the murder likely occurred sometime between July 2009 and April 2010. The body had been submerged in groundwater for months. Vital evidence? Washed away. And yet, the killer made one mistake. While combing through the sludge at the bottom of the well, recovery crews found something. A custom-made axe. Its wooden handle reinforced with 2 metal plates. A rare and very specific design. That one clue was about to open a door into one of the most baffling criminal puzzles ever recorded in China. With the evidence they had so far, investigators began to sketch out a profile. Not just of the victim, but of the killer. First, the victim. A physically strong man, likely between 30 and 40 years old. Tough. Built. Not someone easily overpowered. Second, the killer. given how the body was moved and stuffed into such a tight space. They had to be young, or at least physically capable. A strong adult. Probably male. Third, the location. That remote irrigation well? Even many locals didn't know it existed. Whoever chose it knew this land. This wasn't random. The suspect was either from the area or knew it like the back of their hand. And then there was the victim's nudity. No clothes. Nothing. That raised a red flag. Was it simply to humiliate the victim? Or was it something else? Detectives believed it was intentional. Removing the clothing meant removing a key to identification. No tags, no laundry marks, nothing recognizable. It suggested something chilling. The killer might have known the victim personally. Maybe too personally. If people recognized the victim's clothing, they might start asking questions. Questions that could lead straight back to the killer. The police split into two teams. One focused on identifying the victim. They started checking nearby villages around Suanji Township for any missing persons reports. The other team investigated the axe found at the scene. Although there was no blood on the axe, it was recovered from the same well. So officers suspected it was the murder weapon. If they could trace the buyer, it could be a breakthrough. Fortunately, this type of axe wasn't common. The police went door to door to hardware stores near Suanji Township. Finally, they found one shop that sold this very kind of axe. The owner said they had sold 13 of these axes, but couldn't remember exactly who bought them. What mattered most? The shipment arrived at the end of 2009. This was a crucial lead. It meant the murder happened after late 2009, shrinking the possible time frame by 5 whole months. Then, villagers came forward with another clue. On January 28, 2010, someone passing near that field had noticed dark red stains. Something resembling blood near the well. The police began to suspect the crime happened sometime in January 2010. While they hadn't identified the axe's buyer, the timeline was now much narrower. Meanwhile, the missing persons investigation had turned up 17 local people missing in Suanji Township. 17. However, none of their DNA matched the victims. So, the police expanded their search, comparing the victim's DNA with the National Missing Persons Database. Still no matches. The investigation hit a wall. No one had come forward to identify the victim, and the technology couldn't reveal his identity. With no leads from the victim's origin, the detectives had to reconsider their approach. Remember, they suspected the killer was familiar with the area. So what if the missing people weren't just victims, but possibly suspects on the run? The police shifted gears. They began a reverse investigation focusing on locals who had disappeared around early 2010. Sure enough, one name stood out. Wang Xiyuan. Wang Xiyuan made his living running a small chicken farm nearby. According to villagers, he was heavily in debt and fled town to escape his creditors. He was short, about 5 feet 3 inches, and very thin. That didn't quite match the physical profile police had for their suspect. So why did Wang Xiyuan catch their attention? 6 months before disappearing, he bought a brand new car, a bright red Santana sedan. But shortly after, he took the car to a repair shop to have it completely repainted. Then he vanished. The car was abandoned at the garage and never picked up. The police tracked down the vehicle, a red Santana, and conducted an extremely thorough search. In the corner of the trunk, beneath a layer of dead leaves, they found a small stain of dark red substance. At first, they wondered if it was just red paint from the repainting job. But paint dries hard. This stain? Soft. Fresh. Forensic experts were called in immediately to analyze the sample. The result? Complete human DNA. When compared with the victim's DNA, it was a match. By now, it was almost certain. The red Santana had been the vehicle used to transport the victim. This placed Wang Xiyuan squarely in the spotlight as a prime suspect. But months had passed since his disappearance. No one knew where he was. Through interviews with family and friends, police learned that right after vanishing, Wang had sent texts explaining he was going into hiding to escape his debts. He said he wouldn't be back anytime soon. The investigation confirmed Wang was deeply in debt. When the local farmer suddenly disappeared at the end of January, he left behind more than $1 million in unpaid bank loans. Police then focused their efforts on uncovering any connection between Wang and the victim. They pulled Wang's phone records. For months before he vanished, Wang had been in frequent contact with 2 phone numbers registered in Tianjin. One of those numbers had been deactivated 6 months prior, exactly around the time the victim died. Working with the telecom company, police identified the owner of the number. His name was Han Bunli, a man from Tianjin. The police rushed to Tianjin to continue their investigation. They soon discovered Han Bunli had also been missing for months, with no contact even with his family. Family descriptions revealed something shocking. Han Bunli's physical features were remarkably similar to the victim's. A DNA test confirmed the truth. The victim found in the well was indeed Han Bunli. But why did Han Bunli end up dead in Shanghai County? The story took a darker turn when police identified the owner of the second phone number, a man named Han Baoshan. Officers tracked down Han Baoshan quickly. At first, Han Baoshan offered no useful information until Han Bunli's wife revealed a suspicious detail during questioning. After her husband went missing, she had asked Han Baoshan about his whereabouts. Han Baoshan told her he had seen Han Bunli after January 24th. But forensic results clearly showed Han Bunli had already died by January 24th. This blatant lie turned Han Baoshan from a key witness into a prime suspect. The task force launched an immediate manhunt. 3 days later, Han Baoshan was caught trying to buy a train ticket to northeast China. Under interrogation, he dropped a bombshell. He and Han Bunli had indeed traveled together to Shanghai, hired by someone to commit a murder. The employer was none other than Wang Xiyuan, who had been missing for days, and the target was Zhong Benling, a 40-year-old man running a funeral business in Shanghai County. Han Baoshan and Han Bunli thought it would be a simple job. Just one man to kill. But things didn't go as planned. Once in Shanghai, they tried multiple methods to eliminate Zhong Benling. Staging car accidents, even planting explosives in his vehicle. Yet Zhong was incredibly lucky. Each time, he narrowly escaped death. Why would Wang Xiyuan want Zhong Benling dead? The motive emerged from the tangled relationships between these men. Zhong Benling and Wang Xiyuan were friends. But Wang had been having an affair with Zhong's wife, Zhong Hongxia, wanting to be with her without obstacles. Wang resorted to a deadly plan, hiring hitmen to get rid of Zhong Benling. Wang Xiyuan and Zhong Hongxia pulled together 100,000 yuan to hire the 2 hitmen from Tianjin, Han Baoshan and Han Bunli. But Zhong Benling was cautious by nature. Han Baoshan and Han Bunli's several attempts to track and assassinate him all failed, and only served to alert their target. Zhong Benling became even more vigilant. Frustrated by repeated failures, Wang and Zhong increased the payment by another 40,000 yuan. bringing the total fee to 140,000 yuan. Yet these two assassins lacked professionalism. Zhong's car was blown to pieces in an explosion, but Zhong himself remained unharmed. Their repeated assassination attempts kept missing the mark. Meanwhile, the killers kept demanding money from Wang Xiyuan, which led to mounting tension between them. This was a dangerous game. The longer it dragged on, the more likely it would blow up in their faces. So Wang Xiyuan, ever calculating, decided to end things quickly. He hatched a plan to sow discord between the two hitmen. He met with each of them separately, giving them the same ultimatum. Either you take out Zhong Benling fast, collect the full 140,000 yuan, and leave together. If you can't get it done, kill your partner, take the entire payment for yourself, and end it right there. Han Benli, a reasonable man, chose to stick with the original plan and proceed cautiously. But Han Baoshan had other ideas. After several failed attempts and seeing Zhong Benling completely unharmed, Han Baoshan decided Zhong was too tough to take down easily. He reasoned, even if the job succeeded, each of them would only get 70,000 yuan. After much internal struggle, Han Baoshan made a cold calculation. His goal was money, no matter what. He didn't care who he had to kill. Driven by greed, Han Baoshan turned on his own accomplice and fellow townsman, Han Benli. One night, when Han Benli was off guard, Han Baoshan struck and killed him outright. After committing the murder, Han Baoshan and Wang Xiyuan loaded Han Benli's lifeless body into the red Santana sedan. Together, they drove to the outskirts of town. There, in a remote and abandoned farmland, they stuffed his body, head first, into an old, narrow irrigation well. A place so hidden that even locals barely remembered it existed. The plan was cold, calculated, and brutal. But Wang Xiyuan wasn't done. Worried that the car might contain incriminating evidence, he took the vehicle to a nearby repair shop and had it completely repainted. Even after that, paranoia crept in. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. So not long after, he vanished, completely off the grid. Following Han Baoshan's confession, Shanghai police swiftly arrested Zhong Hongxia, the woman behind the murder-for-hire plot. The court handed down its sentences. Zhong Hongxia was found guilty of intentional homicide. Her role in financing and orchestrating the attempted murder earned her 11 years in prison. As for Han Baoshan, the man who killed his own partner, he was convicted of intentional homicide as well. The court sentenced him to death with a 2-year reprieve. But the mastermind of the entire scheme, Wang Xiyuan, remains at large, having fled before authorities could catch up to him. He is now a fugitive under national warrant. The hunt continues. And with that, the case enters its final chapter, justice served for some, but still incomplete. But the story didn't end with the verdict. 2 years after the sentencing, police never stopped searching for Wang Xiyuan. Despite countless investigations, undercover visits, and even a nationwide fugitive sweep, he was nowhere to be found. And that didn't add up. A man on the run still needs money to survive. Yet Wang Xiyuan's bank accounts remained untouched. His ID never used. And no relatives outside the province had heard from him. It was as if he had simply vanished. Stuck in limbo, investigators began re-examining the case, reviewing every detail from the beginning. That's when they found it. A crucial clue they had once overlooked. Shortly after his disappearance, Wang Xiyuan had sent out a mass text message to all the adult men in his village. At first glance, the message read like something a fugitive would send. Apologetic, evasive, and vague. But now, years later, something stood out. The greeting, brothers. In a conservative rural community where hierarchy and respect are everything, Wang's message was jarring. Most of the recipients were older than him, uncles, elders, even men old enough to be his father. Calling them brothers? It wasn't just inappropriate. It was out of character. Wang Xiyuan was known to be polite, observant of social norms. A man who respected rank and seniority. So why would he suddenly break with all that tradition? Unless he never sent that message. Piecing together every shred of evidence, the police finally came to a chilling realization. The text message was not sent by Wang Xiyuan himself. And if that was true, then Wang Xiyuan wasn't in hiding. He was dead. A victim just like the others. So now the question became, who killed him? The first suspect was obvious. Han Baoshan, the man who had worked side by side with Wang Xiyuan in the murder of Han Bunli. They were both knee-deep in crime, each holding evidence that could destroy the other. But Han Baoshan had a solid alibi. At the time Wang vanished, he simply couldn't have done it. That's when investigators remembered someone else. Someone who had narrowly escaped death multiple times. Someone who had every reason to want revenge. Zhong Benling. The man Wang Xiyuan had tried again and again to have killed. Up until now, Zhong Benling had always been seen as a victim. A lucky one, sure. But a victim. But with Wang's disappearance, Zhong Benling's role was suddenly less clear. And then, one offhand comment from months ago came rushing back to the investigators.
Those idiots. They dumped the body in a well. If it were me, I'd have burned it.
It was a throwaway line, maybe even a joke. But in hindsight, it felt way too specific. At the time, that eerie remark from Zhong Benling had been brushed off. Just an angry outburst, maybe a morbid joke. Because let's face it, burning a body isn't exactly easy. You can't just light a fire and expect someone to vanish. To cremate a human body without leaving a trace, you'd need a powerful furnace, high heat, and most of all, a place where no one would notice. A place like a crematorium. And suddenly, it all clicked. Zhong Benling wasn't just anyone. He had spent over a decade in the funeral business. Every day, his job was to pick up the deceased from nearby villages and deliver them to the crematorium. No one would question his presence. No one would check his cargo. And no one, absolutely no one, would suspect. If one extra body was added to the fire, this immediately set off alarms in the minds of investigators. Because as anyone familiar with the process knows, cremation isn't casual. It requires paperwork, a death certificate, an official cause, proper authorization. So, if Wang Xiyuan had been cremated, there had to be a trail. First, they needed to determine the exact date he vanished. Investigators re-interviewed locals, and one villager recalled seeing Wang on his last known day, but couldn't remember the date. What he did remember was the weather. It was a foggy morning. Light snow. Very unusual for our village. Police cross-checked this with meteorological records. There was only one day in recent memory that matched. March 9th, 2010. So now, the working theory was Wang Xiyuan disappeared shortly after March 9th. Investigators pulled the cremation records from that week. Zhong Benling, the funeral operator, had transported 5 bodies within 10 days after March 9th, all with complete paperwork, all seemingly above board. Had they hit a dead end? For a moment, maybe. But then they went wider. They reviewed every single body Zhong Benling had transported in recent years. And that's when one name stood out. A man with the surname Ding. An elderly individual cremated in December 2008. Nothing strange, except that the exact same name appeared again in March 2010 on cremation records from a neighboring county. Same full name. 2 different counties. 2 different years. And both times, the corpse was transported by Zhong Benling. Coincidence? Or had someone been burned under a stolen name? A person can't die twice, and certainly can't be cremated twice. Police reached out to the family of the elderly man with the surname Ding. They confirmed, yes, our father passed away in December 2008. He was cremated properly at that time. That meant the second cremation under this same name, which happened on March 9th, 2010, was a fraud. So if it wasn't the real Mr. Ding who was cremated in 2010, who was it? The answer was chillingly simple. Wang Xiyuan, the man who had vanished without a trace. The man who sent a suspicious farewell message to villagers, addressing elders as brothers. A man who, according to all banking, cell phone, and surveillance records, had simply vanished into thin air. Now, all signs pointed to him being secretly cremated under a false identity. And only one person had both the motive and the means to pull this off. That person was Zhong Benling. Let's rewind the story. Wang Xiyuan and Zhong Benling were once friends. Then came the betrayal. Xiyuan seduced Zhong's wife, Zhong Hongxia, and together they plotted to have Zhong killed. They paid 14,000 yuan to 2 hitmen. And Zhong, through sheer luck or survival instinct, escaped multiple attempts on his life. But this wasn't a man who'd forgive and forget. Zhong Benling ran a funeral business. He'd been doing it for over a decade. He knew the system. He knew the loopholes. He had access to transport, paperwork, and, most chilling of all, the furnace. His work gave him the perfect cover. And the average person, let alone law enforcement, wouldn't have suspected. The body tagged as Old Mr. Ding was actually Wang Xiyuan. With one act of calculated vengeance, Zhong not only eliminated his enemy, he erased him from existence. Motive? Clear. Means? Obvious. Opportunity? Perfectly timed. Zhong Benling was no longer just a victim. He was now the prime suspect in one of the most cold-blooded, methodically concealed homicides in recent years. The evidence was almost gone. No body. No eyewitnesses. Just a name, reused for a corpse that didn't belong. But the police knew. If Zhong Benling had really committed the perfect crime, he must have made a mistake somewhere. Then came a new lead. From someone closest to the suspect. Zhong Benling's wife, Zhong Hongxia. She told investigators that sometime after March 2010, a seat cushion from their wooden sofa suddenly went missing. It was winter. The cushion was essential. Handmade. Brand new. There was no reason to throw it out. Naturally, she asked her husband what happened. He fumbled. No clear answer. Just vague, nervous deflection. And that was all the police needed. A single thread to pull. So they returned to his home. And this time, they didn't just look around. They searched. Inside the creases of the couch. Beneath years of dust and fibers. They found something nearly invisible. A tiny patch of dried, darkened blood. So small, it could have been mistaken for a stain. But the forensics team swabbed it, extracted DNA. Match. It was Wang Xiyuan's blood. And just like that, Zhong Benling's years-long silence collapsed. Faced with undeniable proof, the man who once mocked the killers that tried to murder him, who once boasted, "If it were me, I'd have burned the body," finally broke down. He confessed. He had used the crematory to destroy the body. He had stolen an old man's identity to cover up the crime. And he had kept that secret hidden for over 2 years. But one drop of blood, tucked inside a couch, brought the entire plan crashing down. So now, the truth begins to surface. Not just how the murder happened, but why. Zhong Benling wasn't just a target. He was a man betrayed. While he worked in the shadows of death, handling the departed with care, his wife, Zhong Hongxia, and his friend, Wang Xiyuan, plotted to end his life. Multiple attempts failed. A bomb in his car. A staged accident. Each time, he narrowly escaped. But survival wasn't enough. Zhong Benling began to see the whole picture. The affair, the money, the hired killers. And something in him changed. If this doesn't end, I will. He made a choice. One that would blur the line between victim and killer. They want someone dead. Fine. But it won't be me. He stopped waiting. He started planning. March 9th, 2010. The morning fog hung low over Shandong's farmland when Zhong Benling turned the key in his ignition and headed for Wang Xiyuan's chicken farm. But this wasn't a visit. It was a trap. With a calm voice and a lowered head, Zhong Benling played the part of the man who wanted peace. He told Wang, "Let's put it all behind us. I don't want to fight anymore." And maybe Wang believed him. Maybe guilt made him follow. Or maybe he just wanted to get Zhong out of the way. Fast. Zhong Hongxia was hiding in his house just then. Back at Zhong's house, the tone changed. At first, they sat, talked. But then, the words sharpened. Accusations flew. Tempers rose. Until violence erupted. Wang Xiyuan, the man who had ordered another's death, wasn't ready to fight for his own life. Zhong Benling was stronger. But he wasn't alone. In the shadows waited Li Wenxi, Zhong's shop assistant, his silent accomplice in this deadly plot. Together, they struck. And just like that, the man who had sent others to kill lay dead on Zhong Benling's living room floor. But death was just the beginning. The question now was, how do you make a body disappear when your job is to send bodies into flames? Zhong Benling had access. He knew the system because he was part of it. So he forged a death certificate, took the name of an elderly man who'd passed away years earlier, filled out a blank cremation form, and slipped it into the queue at the funeral home. No one opened the body bag. No one checked the face. The paperwork looked fine, so they lit the fire. When it was over, Zhong took the ashes and scattered them into the river. Wang Xiyuan was gone. No grave. No trace. No proof. He thought it was perfect. A crime hidden in the folds of bureaucracy, camouflaged by chaos, complicated by tangled relationships and mutual betrayals. But the detectives kept pulling at the threads, one by one, until the whole thing unraveled. April 25, 2014. The Intermediate People's Court of Jinan handed down its ruling. Zhong Benling, guilty of murder, sentenced to life in prison. And with that, the tangled, brutal saga of the Shanghai case finally came to a close. A tale with no heroes, just villains, each more desperate than the last.
Thank you for listening to Major Case, True Crime Investigations. If you found this episode compelling, please subscribe and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will explore another intriguing case.